Chapter 1. Be mindful while cultivating your interests that you don't find yourself in a cult. The only way out is in. Focusing on externals, however noble the intention, is just an intended distraction. Yours truly. As a former educator and devoted psychonaut exploring the fringes of consciousness for many years now, part of me resists putting this out there at the get-go, since I know many will resist the very notion, but here goes anyway in the interest of full disclosure. Far from being a universally positive characteristic, curiosity doesn't always lead to healthy outcomes. Some context. To contextualize my seemingly antithetical proposition, even though I've always had a fairly sensitive BS detector, I've nevertheless followed my own curious nose down several paths of knowledge, a problematic term at best, as I'll explain, only to realize, inevitably too late, that I'd been lured into the vestibule of a massive cult edifice. My teenage stint as a Southern Baptist, not because I loved Jesus but because the youth group and choir happened to be a blast, and my leftist indoctrination via prestigious liberal arts universities are two examples with which many probably can identify. There were literal impressive vestibules that ushered one into those beguiling environments. I don't know about you, but I have a weakness, one I strongly suspect now to be a form of cult indoctrination, for large-scale architecture that obviously costs a lot of money to construct and maintain. The only difference between a cult and a religion, said a very wise gentleman named Frank Zappa, is the amount of real estate they own. As my eponymous narrator phrases it in my forthcoming novel on the primacy of consciousness in an observer-generated construct such as ours, Beginner's Luke, Adventure of an Imaginary Lifetime. Fuck banks and churches united in the displays of power through ostentatiously redundant space. In this scene, Luke, who has become a slacker in the early 90s, is beginning to recognize, as many of us, reality researchers, are likewise doing nowadays, the bedrock of society for what it is, a colossal cult. My own biographical details aren't important, but the underlying lesson I eventually harvested from my time spent willingly participating in the giant loosh farm of the earth is potentially of tremendous value to any who would truly break free of the control matrix that, like the air we breathe, or don't, if you ask Morpheus, is all around us. In this thoroughly mind-manipulated world, in this realm literally produced by thought installations that create reality tunnels, a sad but true term, your own interests can and will be used against you. Is education a solution, or a problem? If the foregoing sounds like a warning not to over-educate yourself on any particular topic, perhaps it is, somewhat. Again, perish the thought. Yet here we are, thinking it, and for darn good reason. Over and above the myopia and navel-gazing induced by today's compartmentalization in education, followed by soul-suckingly unidimensional career paths, too much focus on a topic or area of expertise can lead you, whistling all the while, straight down the garden path, into a cult. I wish to emphasize that cults don't have to identify themselves as such. In fact, based on outward appearances, most cults don't act the part at all. The worst cults are the chameleons in society, the seemingly natural groupings of people for seemingly normal purposes that no one in their right mind should ever question. And these, I'm sorry to say, as it turns out, are the most diabolically underhanded of all. At the level of the inhuman and inhumane intelligence, the wrong mind, most people have downloaded, as I'll explain a bit later, scripting so-called collective reality. The disguise is absolutely intentional. It's part of the honey trap. And you're the target. You start, for example, with curiosity, a simple, childlike wish to know more about something, anything. Curiosity seems natural, and I suppose it is, or ought to be, and yet how easily we forget it was what killed the cat. Following your nose, you go deeper and deeper, and meet others with similar mindsets. And before you know it, you're identifying as part of a privileged group and engaging in what should properly be called groupthink. According to Wikipedia, which I'll be using throughout this ebook for expediency and accessibility only, not because I trust it, groupthink is sometimes stated to occur within natural groups within the community, for example to explain the lifelong different mindsets of those with differing political views, such as conservatism and liberals, in the US political context, or the purported benefits of teamwork versus work conducted in solitude. However, this conformity of viewpoints within a group does not mainly involve deliberate group decision-making, and might be better explained by the collective confirmation bias of the individual members of the group. This collective confirmation bias is the dead weight at the would-be heart and soul of cults large and small. I write would-be because deeply indoctrinated cult members have had much of their individuality and sovereignty of thought, word and deed, their heart and soul, replaced by, you guessed it, groupthink. This can happen in families as easily as in fan bases, in churches as effortlessly as in corporations. Leaders and followers. There may or may not be an identifiable leader in such scenarios. A powerful enough idea, by itself, can serve as the leader. And it often does.